Throughout Cyberpunk, we meet a large cast of characters, all with different personalities and views, like Misty, Jackie's love interest and tarot card reader, or even Kerry, the lead guitarist for Samurai. These two and more make up the companions of Cyberpunk, characters we can do missions for and go on adventures with. Today's video will be discussing these characters, their personalities, their side missions, what the outcomes of those side missions are, and just an overall analysis of the character. Now, there is a ton of characters that exist in this game. Some are main characters, some are only accessible during side missions, so I looked through the characters and came up with a character list of roughly when we meet them. This list includes Jackie, Judy, Claire, Takemura, Panam, River, and Kerry. I wanted to add characters like Misty and Victor, as while they're important, as you see them quite a few times in the game, they don't have too much for you to do for them. Misty does have the tarot card collectible quest, but the ending isn't really too significant besides the heavy foreshadowing of the endings of the game. Johnny isn't in this video because he's present for the majority of the game, and because he has so much screen time, it's only fair to give him his own video, so look for a full Silverhand deep dive video in the future. As always, there's going to be timestamps on screen in the description or on the timeline if you want to skip to a specific character, but if you prefer not to, then let's start with Jackie Wells. Jackie is the first character we come across in Night City. Depending on the life path we choose, he can either be already our friend or our enemy. No matter the circumstance, you and Jackie become best friends, eager to make it to the top. Jackie's a guy who values his friends and family and always puts them first. Jackie's a professional when it comes to mercenary work and has a great respect for the legends before him, as he constantly praises Morgan Blackhand, Rogue, and Adam Smasher and calls them the legends of Night City. There is a time lapse to solidify this friendship, showing the two going on missions together all the time. Eventually, after doing some missions and gaining some respect, popular fixer Dexter Deshawn recruits Jackie and V to go on some missions. The first two contracts were just setup missions for the bigger heist later. As we know, the heist goes south, causing T-Bug and Jackie to both die. This is technically where this would end, if not for a future side mission where you and many of Jackie's friends set up an offering and memorial for him at the Coyote Kojo. Mama Wells calls you and asks you if you want to attend the funeral. Should you accept, then you go to Jackie's garage and can see his past along with Misty. Tons of things are in here: his bike, rare tequila, motivational posters, and an aquarium. There's also a belt that provides more insight into his father, as we've never heard of him before. Jackie's dad used to beat him when he was a child. Jackie returned the favor one day, and the next day after, his dad left. So when his dad left home and moved out, Jackie kept the belt with him so that when his dad ever returned, he would beat him again with it as payback. You can take some of these items in here and use them as a memento for the funeral. It doesn't really matter though, as it's just personal choice. Afterward, you can talk to Mama Wells about her attitude towards Misty. Mama Wells never really liked Misty, saying that she was never really a good fit for a girlfriend and that Jackie's previous girlfriend was way better. You can talk her out of this attitude and she apologizes and then gives you the key to Jackie's bike, the Arc, as a reward for attending the funeral. Arc is actually a real bike company, funnily enough owned by Keanu Reeves, so a nice reference to the company. There doesn't seem to be a model for the actual bike in their store, but it would be a really cool purchase to get Jackie's bike in real life, so maybe in the future that'd be a model they consider producing. Going back to those setup missions, we meet a woman named Evelyn, who introduces us to Judy Alvarez, a member of the Moxes, who runs a braindance studio downstairs in Lizzie's bar. While she isn't like the typical employers the Moxes have, sex workers, etc., she is a braindance editor for the Moxes, which goes hand in hand with their business, which is why she's a part of them. She's always been hard at work trying to change things for the gang. Nothing like full-on corporate takeovers, but more getting people to respect the gang, as in real life, sex work is a controversial topic, and I think that argument is what created the Moxes gang in the first place for the game. Judy introduces us to braindance and how to operate them, which helps us in the heist. Later in the game, we end up needing Evelyn's assistance, as we need the biochip out of our head, and we can ask Judy for some instructions. While she isn't very pleased, she does tell us about a place called Clouds. Clouds is a popular nightclub that is known to cater to client-specific desires, so depending on your specific desire, it's like therapy with a hint of sex appeal. There is an optional objective to see her booth and see what happened. It seems like she had her chip malfunction during a client meeting, so there seems to be some intentional fraud going on. You find out through multiple methods she visited Fingers, local ripper dock. Through braindance activity, you find a factory where she could be hiding. We find her beaten and bruised. She is unresponsive but somewhat conscious, so we take her and dip. We take her to Judy's apartment and we can delve more into her memories thanks to the braindance roller she has installed in her. We can use this opportunity beforehand to go through Judy's apartment, where we can see tons of high-tech equipment and scuba gear. Judy managed to salvage some BD content from her, which we use to gain more context on the whole situation. We find some religious markings that are of Haitian descent, as well as a woman with enough net running skills to hide her face, which could only mean one thing: the Voodoo Boys. They're a gang in Pacifica which is made up of Haitian people. Haiti, before the setting of Cyberpunk, got hit with a devastating earthquake that forced the residents to flee. This created the Voodoo Boys gang. These seem to be the same people who nuked Evelyn's chip at Clouds that we saw. All she was told to do was record a virtue, but as we know from the heist, she had plans to swipe the chip from Arasaka, which is not what she was told to do. She was then punished for it later, which we see in that recording. The other BD we have is Evelyn spying on someone, which further talks about the chip, and Alt Cunningham, the runner behind the Black Wall. This is the last we hear about Evelyn and Judy for a little bit, as we have some main quests to do with the Voodoo Boys, but we don't really care about that right now. Later in the game, Judy tells us to come to her apartment, and we see Evelyn in the tub. job. She couldn't handle the trauma from the studio we found her at, and she ended her life. We find out that Evelyn was raped and abused by Woodman and then sold off to the highest bidder once he was finished with her. This then sprouts into Judy's side quest of getting revenge by making the Mox employees not have to deal with this abuse anymore. To start, we end up going to the Cloud's office and speaking with one of the head people, Maiko. Something that's slightly shown is Judy smoking. In the scene with Evelyn, she asks for some smokes. She mentioned that she quit a while ago but insists on having some anyway to take the edge off, but now we can see her back on her addiction, which is pretty sad to see considering she was clean for years. But Judy talks to Maiko about changing Clouds and its policies. Immediately she wants the Tiger Claws out of Clouds, making the Moxes take over. Even knowing the conditions and what happened with Evelyn, Maiko is very stubborn and a real asshole about it. Before you leave, you can choose to kill Evelyn's rapist, which is very satisfying. Judy's new plan is to develop combat AI to help fight against people who get handsy with the workers. It's clearly effective as Tom knocks us on our ass. The plan is to take Clouds over by force now, starting with the boss. This becomes a choice. You have two original options: go with Judy's plan or go with Maiko's plan. Maiko has a secret motive. She wants to run Clouds as she knows that the Tiger Claws value strength and won't take this loss sitting down. Judy's plan is just overtaking Clouds with new management from the Mox. This then sprouts into three options: Judy's plan, Maiko's plan and accepting her payment afterwards, or Maiko's plan without accepting any payment. If you accept Judy's plan, you can continue to the end mission and possibly get a romance, but you find out that Clouds was overrun by the Tiger Claws again and Tom and some of the other workers died in the crossfire. If you accept Maiko's plan and payment, you can't get the ending with Judy and the quest stop here. Then there's of course the middle ground where you do Maiko's plan but you don't accept payment for it. Judy doesn't like it but is okay with the option, and you can still get the end mission and romance her. If you choose this option, Maiko gets to run Clouds and Judy isn't really too happy with it, but she's okay with it. Although the only negative though is that she does mention that some of the workers have complained that whether it was Hiromi or Maiko running things, nothing really changed, which is quite sad to see as all of this was for nothing. Assuming you chose the options to continue the quest line, you get the ending mission where you and Judy attempt some technology invention, the ability to capture both feelings and thoughts of two people in a BD, something not possible before as there was just too much static and white noise that would interfere. It sounds weird how the quest transferred from a revolution to this, but Judy is and always will be a BD editor, so she wants to make more strides in the technology if it means more business for the Moxes. This is a pretty calming mission. You go on a deep sea dive to the ruined town that got flooded, and you get to see Judy's old house. There was a bill written not too long ago about a dam being built, and due to the legislation of it, it caused this town to be flooded and tons of memories are still at the bottom. So Judy simultaneously wants to see her old home and also help record that BD invention she had. Halfway through exploring, you end up collapsing, but she happens to drag you out of the water and save you. You then stop your adventure and have some coffee at the cottage. If your V is female, this is where the romance comes in, and you can sleep together for the night. If you're male, you end up sleeping separately but remain good friends. Judy then has plans to leave Night City and move to Oregon and continue her life away from the bullshit of this city, ending her quest line. As for her voice lines in the ending, most of them are just her talking about her time away from Night City, how it's the best decision she's ever made and we need to do it ourselves. For the suicide ending, she's tearing up over our death, which as we know is bad, especially for her considering that is now 2 friends that have killed themselves in her lifetime. Before the heist, we meet with Dexter Deshawn at the afterlife, but before that meeting, we take a quick stop at the bar inside and have a couple drinks with Jackie, and from there, we're introduced to the bartender Claire. She engages in some small talk, mentioned how some of the legends in the afterlife get a drink named after them. It's a nice little detail that you can go back to the afterlife after Jackie's passing and ask for a Jackie Wells, a drink he named for himself when we first visited there. While it is great, it's sad we aren't even allowed to drink or purchase this though. But Claire, after some time, will call you and mention how we've been gaining some traction, and that she needs a professional to help her. She wants to participate in some races and needs a driver, with the promise of there being a large cash prize at the end. The races are somewhat the same, just in different locations, until we get to the second last race where we hear about a guy named Samson. Claire's husband used to race with her and be the driver, until Samson caused them to crash, which killed her husband. The race was never about money, rather revenge on Samson. During the race, Samson is constantly outpacing you, but at one point in the race, he needs to turn off the road and gets into an accident. If we continue the race and don't follow Samson, Claire hates us for the rest of the game, but if we turn and chase him, we get more options. If Claire kills him, we get her unique car Beast, but if we convince her to spare him, we get Beast and Samson's car a week later when he calls it up. It's up to the player's choice and doesn't really affect any of the endings in the first place. Claire's questline isn't particularly long, but it is fun as most races are. I just wish we could do more of these and not just these 4. During our heist, as we know, things went south quickly and we were dumped in a landfill. Thankfully, we were saved by Takemura, Saburo's main guard. Takemura is loyal to Saburo Arasaka and he is his guard, but he has felt betrayed thanks to Yorinobu killing him him and framing us for his crime. We wake up and defend ourselves from the other Arasaka guards. Yorinobu sent these guards after us as he was worried we may expose his secret that he was the true killer all along, so he wanted to eliminate us and take Takemura in the process. It's from here that we are mobile again and can meet with Takemura to discuss the plan. We have to find Hellman, the man who created the chip, and also talk with some of Takemura's contacts. For his contact, it's Lady Hanako's bodyguard Oda. As you would expect, it goes terrible and he doesn't help us in the slightest. The portion with Hellman is more for our sake and not his, although he does appreciate it if we do notify him that we have Hellman in our possession, as Takemura has some unanswered questions. Takemura's plan was to talk with Lady Hanako, daughter of Saburo, which is why we asked her guard, but since he declined, we have to get more aggressive with it. We must infiltrate a parade starting soon and cut security so Takemura has the opportunity to discuss the issue at hand with her in private. During this, we encounter Oda again in his guard uniform, and if we spare him, Takemura will thank us once again, since he's just doing his duty and he shouldn't be involved in this matter, and if we kill them, his death would be a waste. Hanako during the talk freaks out, and Takemura resorts to tranquilizing and capturing her, so we run from Arasaka and meet at a nearby hotel room. And while that did work for a little bit, we once again have been found and ambushed. We need to escape once more, and it's also interesting that the game doesn't give you this objective, but Takemura is still alive and can be saved. Assuming you're like me and didn't know that, he will die if not saved in this hotel room. Regardless of what you choose, you meet with a proxy from Hanako and discuss a plan, which turns into the end of the game. The only other time he shows up is during the Arasaka ending, which we talk about in the previous video, which is linked in the description and in the eye in the top right. But he does make an appearance in that ending, although it is very short and insignificant. This will also lead to the achievement called the Devil. This ends Takemura's questline. It's not an official questline, but since he's a main character for a short time, I thought it was relevant to at least mention, especially because Takemura is a fun character to talk to. He plays this old man character where he doesn't really seem to understand technology sometimes. As one instance, he was googling food but ended up texting us instead, which added some comedy to his character. While Takemura and V have different policies and opinions, when they work together, things for the most part usually go smoothly. And of course, capping Dexter was really satisfying. During the mission Ghost Town, Rogue gives us info on Hellman, the man who made the biochip. Rogue only knows one person who'll be correct for the job, Panam Palmer, a merc who is an ex-nomad. We find her on the outskirts of Night City and we ask her for help, but she's adamant on getting her car back before we can proceed. Panam has been in some heat over her decisions with the clan the Aldecados. They don't trust her too much and she's completely fucked up Rogue's last job, which is why her car is gone. We eventually meet Scorpion and Mitch, two of her close friends. We quickly pick up a box that will be helpful for later, and we learn a lot about Panam during the drive. Saul, the current leader, is not running things properly in her eyes. They moved here with the promise of a better future and bigger land, but all they got was sand and tents. And we also learned that Mitch and Scorpion were combat veterans in the last corporate war. To get her car first, we need to stake out an old town where the new owner of the car will be. Handling it either stealthily or guns blazing, we take the keys and give the car to Panam. We just need to do two things before she does our part of the job, which is killing Nash, a guy she despises, and to do a trade deal with the 6th Street. After helping her, it's only fair that she helps us, and now it's time to find Hellman. We know that Hellman is arriving on a specific AV here in the outskirts, so we gotta take it down, which we do by sabotaging a corporate power station and EMPing the AV. It wasn't effective, so we gotta improvise. The chase is on to catch where it lands. Mitch and Scorpion also see the explosion and chase after it as well, except they don't know that the Kang Tau guards are there and we can't warn them thanks to the EMP. When we clear the area, we find out Mitch is thankfully still alive, but Scorpion didn't make it. After investigating the crime scene, we follow it to a gas station where we can finally find Hellman and question him on the biochip. This is finally the end of the first intro mission, and we can now continue Panam's questline. As usual, we get a phone call from Panam. Saul got taken by the Wraiths. The Wraiths are the nomads, same as the Aldecados, but they're rogue ex-nomads. Saul was out with a small group and ended up getting ambushed. Panam wants more help with the operation, but the old-timers won't help as they don't care for Saul's authority. In order to do this properly, we need to stake out the camp and proceed with the info we gather. We then find Saul, get him in the van, and drive away. The only problem that arises is the sandstorm which clouds the vision, so we opt to chill at a nearby abandoned home and wait it out. We can choose to make advances with Panam here, but nothing comes of it. The next mission involves a heated debate between Saul and Panam again about the Basilisk, a giant tank. Panam wants to steal it. Saul thinks it's too risky. We of course agree and accompany Panam to stop a train which blocks the path to people carrying the tank. We then kill them and tank the tank for ourselves. We can also make advances towards her once again, but will also prove unsuccessful. It's only in the next mission where our advances finally work. Panam and the veterans are talking about the Basilisk. We then take it for a test drive, and assuming you're a male V, you can have a romance scene with Panam, but midway through of our session of love, we're attacked by the Raffins again and need to fend them off. Fully expecting an argument when Panam returns, she meets with Saul, but Saul accepts her back into the Aldecaldos. After having a beer, Panam tells us to join the Aldecaldos and stay with them, but we clearly got some business with a biochip to handle first. This is the final mission we do with her besides the ending. Panam is the only romanceable character in this game that has her own ending. In this ending, we called the Aldecaldos to help us raid Arasaka Tower. We helped them, so they helped us. The plan is a frontal assault through the defenses with the Basilisk and using a giant drill that's located there to bust through the tower's walls. It's a super entertaining mission with tons of enemies and constant explosions, but sadly not everything was as exciting as once you make it inside into the Mikoshi room, Adam arrives and kills Saul. Assuming you chose the V body and get the Nomad ending, us and Panam, after everything is finished, attempt to leave Night City with the other Nomads. We have some talks with Panam here on this lovely set piece, and V brings up how he wants to find a cure for his problem. Panam also offers to help us and says that some of her fellow Nomads in Arizona may know how to help us. Is this a possible DLC hint? I'll let you be the judge of that. Her voicemails change more frequently than most, especially if you choose her ending in both options. Like we stated in our last video, she is absolutely pissed at Johnny for taking our body over, but if we side with her, she calls talking about camp. If we take the suicide route, she's actually super angry at us for it. Panam easily has the longest quest line and one of the more engaging ones in my opinion, easily the best companion and romance option in the game. It makes it all more cool if you played as a Nomad from the start, as you start with a Nomad, then end as one too, which I thought was pretty cool. Our last two companions are the companions that have the romance options who you may miss since they're from side missions. Our first one is River. We get this from the mission I Fought the Law from District Attorney Peralez. The mayor of Night City passed away, and these two don't believe it was a simple cyber malfunction and that some foul play was involved, so we go through a brain dance to gather some information and context to the situation. In the brain dance, we see a man in a brown coat enter and then a second later fire on a murderer who stabbed a nearby guard. He walks in at the perfect moment, almost too perfect, just before the lunatic does. So to gather more evidence, we need to track this man down in the coat. This guy's name is River Ward. We learn from River that the cyber psycho who attempted to attack the mayor had plans to meet with him, but since he was crazy, the cops wanted to question him at the precinct, but he managed to escape and walk right into the building without anyone noticing. River knew about this and attempted to warn the mayor about this incident, which is what we saw in the brain dance, which is why he was so perfect in his timing. The only info we have to go off of is that the late Mayor Ryan went to a club called Red Queen's Race before he died. Problem is we don't know who, where, or how he ended up dying. Thankfully, a friend of Rivers knows the location. Red Queen's Race is a club owned by the Animals, the local gang, and once inside we find a used BD wreath on the floor. When we put it on, it fries our systems and almost kills us. Thankfully, River was there to assist, but now we know what caused the killing. Looking at the camera footage, we see Detective Han from earlier at the scene of the crime. It seems someone hacked the BD to kill the mayor. When Detective Han reported it, he talked about changing the narrative and not telling the actual truth. We confront Han that we know what he's up to, but he's very calm about the situation, considering the fact that we can't do shit to him thanks to the way the people of this city work, which makes it harder for River to bring him to justice, but at least the case gets opened up again. Sadly, we can't pursue this any further. Regardless though, River thanks us for our assistance, which finishes the intro quest line. Later, he calls us and needs our help. He shows us some news footage of a man named Anthony being shot by cops as he was found with a dead body in his car. While it's intriguing already, it's discovered that River's nephew Randy was taken by an Anthony, and Anthony was spotted wearing Randy's shoes. Except we have no clue where Anthony took Randy, and now that Anthony is in a vegetative state, we have no leads. This was then opened up in a case, but it makes sense that River wasn't on the case due to him possibly being too emotionally invested in the case, seeing as it's his nephew. But the person that was assigned to the case hasn't gotten anywhere, which is why he takes it into his own hands. We then track down a building where Anthony's dreams could be. While we explore, we find some interesting Easter eggs, and while doing so, we're caught by one of the workers. So we head to a relative's house, Joss, who is Randy's mom. We do this so we can find evidence from Randy's side as opposed from Anthony's to see if anything connects or give us some clues. On his computer, we find a video of a cow being drained for its milk. Anthony lured Randy in because of his troubled pasts. Anthony's father was abusive to him, and Randy's dad died in his early life, so they both had troubled childhoods. Anthony used this to lure Randy into his trap. He also found Randy's IP address, which he probably figured out where he was from there. Through some digging on Anthony's website, we can see the cow video again and how it relates. Through the use of a BD, we can get into the mind of Anthony as a child. He was tormented by his teachers and his father. His father was a farmer who would constantly yell at him over the smallest things. We see this keep a hold of him mentally as he still watches this same video of the cow and his mind floods with those terrible memories. He sees a person attempting to escape but catches them before they can leave. But more notably, we see the devices these people are hooked up to, the same ones the cows were using back when he was a kid. He's treating the boys like they're cattle. We have all the info that we need and now know the place that he could be. Once inside the farm, we look around for a way to stop the gas and break the people out. Luckily, we find Randy amongst the victims and are able to save him. River's happy with this conclusion, but not yet, as he wants to get revenge by actually killing Anthony. We can opt to help him, but but he says it's something he has to handle on his own. The last quest we receive from River is to come by the house, where we get to enjoy a nice family dinner. We find out that Randy is still in intensive care, but he's recovering, and that River decided not to kill Anthony as it seemed more like an execution than a simple killing, and it just didn't sit right with his conscience. We then enjoy some quality family time, like playing VR with the kids, eating food together, and drinking some beers in the water tower. Assuming your V is female, you can then romance River here, but other than that, it's just two dudes drinking and relaxing. He then gives you his gun as a reward and ending the questline. For his voicemails, it's mostly about the crimes he's been up to, except in the suicide ending where he pays his respects and says that a buddy of his did the same thing when the higher-ups in the force weren't treating him right. I've always been a fan of murder mystery quests in any type of RPG game, and I like the new implications of the new technology of BDs to help find clues, so this is a really fun questline to do. Our last companion and romance partner for the video is Kerry Uridine. We're introduced to Kerry during the Samurai questline with Johnny and Rogue. Kerry wants to get Samurai back together for one last gig. Assuming you do this, he will then send you a text where you can start his separate questline. When you meet Kerry again, he talks about some sabotage. The popular Japanese girl group Us Cracks are having a concert soon, and we're here to sabotage the concert and cancel it by destroying their equipment. This is because Us Cracks are doing a remix of one of Kerry's songs, and he's not happy about it. So we spike the road and blow the van up, destroying the gear. We then take a trip to the local coffee shop, not only to celebrate but learn about the past of Samurai. Apparently the band would always go to this place all the time, even if they had no money, as it was dirt cheap. Sadly, this didn't solve anything, as they didn't cancel the gig, they just merely postponed it. So now we gotta talk to them in person. By sneaking in, we get a private discussion with the group, except things become a little twisted. We discover that they had true passion for Kerry's music and that the label wanted them to make the remix. The label fucked them both over. He apologizes, then takes a photo with them for the memories. Things started pretty wild, but ended pretty tame, which is real nice. Sometime later, we meet Kerry at this club, and we see that not only have the Us Cracks and Kerry made up, they've actually collaborated on a song together. But something is still eating at him. When we question Kerry, he mentions that he doesn't want things to go wrong or the media to spin the story. Old irrelevant rocker boy helps Asian pop group and attempts to be relevant again. He doesn't want that kind of attitude or attention towards him, as that's not true. He also just doesn't want to be in another person's shadow again. People have always remembered Johnny Silverhand from Samurai, not so much Kerry. That's why he left Samurai in the beginning. Us Cracks has also gained tons more attention than Kerry has, and he doesn't want that to happen again. Thanks to the label and how easy it is to manipulate the music industry, it could quite possibly happen, so he's very scared about it. You can then kiss Kerry and tell him everything's gonna be alright, and you can get closer to the romance. Our last mission is Kerry inviting us on a boat for a drive and some hangout. He sits there making music while we take a load off. He then smashes the rare guitar right in front of us. Turns out this isn't his boat or his guitar. It's Kovacek's, the label guy who fucked Kerry over. So we trash the shit out of his boat, throwing records, paintings, coffee machines, and it's at this point where you can fully romance with Kerry. This then starts the cutscene, at which point he lights the boat on fire in the middle of things, and once the fire spreads too much, we dip out while it's all on fire. We then sit on the beach watching the boat explode, then sink to the bottom, finishing the questline. Kerry's questline was actually pretty fun. Blowing shit up is never boring, and it was a nice resolution of the questline. For his voicemails at the ending, he talks about the collab with Us Cracks and how everything worked out okay in the end. In the suicide ending, he's like Panam. He's very angry at us, especially since, as we know, a rumor about Kerry attempting to kill himself spread like wildfire in the media, and he understands the attention and negativity that can bring, and is mad at us for doing so. This then ends our companion's deep dive video. Like I said, the Cyberpunk videos are only just beginning, as I got more on the way. A full Johnny deep dive, cyberpsychosis, the future of the story, tons more. So stay subscribed to the channel for all that future content, but with that all settled, thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in a future story video. Goodbye and take care.